I haven't mentioned the books, the prizes that these poets have won. You have that in your bios in the program. But when you hear the poems, this is what I was thinking. I thought, well, should I have? But what you hear of a life, you hear in the poems. And listening to Laure-Anne, I know that you know far more than you would know by just titles and prizes. And then there's Kurt Brown. Kurt Brown, I knew through his work at first. He was the founder of the Aspen Writers' Conference I attended in the 80s. And I don't know that we ever said 2 words to each other, but it meant a great deal in my life. And then there you were, co-editor with Laure-Anne of that very interesting anthology. You knew it from the title, Night Out, poems about hotels, motels, restaurants, and bars. You'd think everyone would pick it up. And then Kurt and Laure-Anne became part of my life. Residents of Greenwich Village in New York City, near where I live. And suddenly there was Kurt sitting next to me at a table at a board meeting at Poets House. And I love this, the way we come into each other's lives unexpectedly, and how delicious if it's through the work that we love. And then. And that's how it's been with Kurt. He has the grace to give the perfect toast at a party. I know that. And then I open Laure-Anne's book and I see I wouldn't have remembered that she dedicates it with one word to Kurt, and the one word is grace. Grace, Kurt. You are in for a treat. His generosity. It's a generosity that enters his poems, his toasts, his poems. In them he spans centuries, hemispheres, and even genders. Fabulous, the poet who gives us the history of civilization in the autobiography of a minor bacteria. We laugh, but also shiver. All in 11 lines. Read it. At this point, I feel like saying, step right up, because it's a magician, I feel Kurt is. Step right up, folks. Listen to this magician. A man become a woman, a poet born in Brooklyn become an East European. We are lucky to have his poems, the poems of his wonder. And listen to these lines. Look, the sun moves, pushing its head through a strawberry. Beautiful, Kurt Brown.
I too, Miles, want to say thank you so much. It really is an honor to be here and to be with all of you students and participants in the conference and with the other wonderful faculty members. And to be warm for once in the winter. I had a really nice reading that I put together, and then at that same little talk last night at the table with the other poets, and Tom and Tony and I and Mary, and we started to talk about, for some reason, young male violence and cruelty. And Tony and I were blinking at each other and saying, why did we do that? Why did we do those things when we were young? So I started to think about these poems that I'd written. I have an extraordinary amount of guilt about it, so I realized that I had written more than one poem about it. This first one is called Bombing the Swarm. It takes place in Long Island, where it's at a summer camp. And I guess we were aware of the fact that some huge event had just taken place. But that we were born a little too late, but it was the Second World War, but we were vaguely aware of it. So some of the imagery comes from that. Bombing the Swarm. This swarm of bees was hanging from the branch of a tall tree, a writhing mass that clung together and swung down like a black bell. One of the boys, can't remember who, picked up an apple. It was late August, 51 or 52, and hurled it into the nest. It came apart in hunks like a skull exploding, then recomposed. But we kept hurling apples, and the swarm kept flying apart, flying together, replay of a bullet entering a man's brain. Looking back, I realized we couldn't stop. Neither could the bees. We had this frenzy. That's when I learned how dangerous I was. So that now, when I walk in a field, my shadow makes crickets hush and birds fly away in alarm. So I'm assuming that nature recognizes me and wants to hide. This is a little scene that's as American as anything else, and you won't see it in Norman Rockwell or Currier and Ives, but it's a scene that's replayed over and over and over again. It's when a father is teaching his son how to shoot a rifle for the first time. In this case, it's a Mauser, which is a German rifle, and the poem sort of makes that clear. Mauser. Just the word Mauser. It's reptilian sibilance, menace of something primitive, uncivilized, cruel. Then the stock, unlovely wood, splintery, rippled grain, the color of dried mud, as if a crude approximation of an ideal stock, some pedigreed hunting rifle sculptured to a high gloss. And the barrel, lithe, invincible steel, snub rod sticking out of its thin carapace of wood, top piece clamped halfway down its length to sheathe its mechanisms from fire and flung dirt. Mauser. The rifle German foot soldiers used, measured not in calibers but millimeters, 9 millimeters, redolent of something exotic, something unfamiliar and strange. My father held it up and stepped back. "This is not a toy," he said. "Never point a weapon at anyone, and never assume it isn't loaded. Always look. Open up the breech and look." Which he did by slamming the bolt back and peering in. "Now you're ready," he said. "Now you can't hurt anyone by mistake." He fed a round into the chamber, brass cartridge gleaming in the sun, bullet pointed like a flame, drove it home with a snug, oiled efficiency, and handed the weapon to me. "Now aim it," he said. "Sight straight down the barrel towards that tree. Don't pull the trigger until you're ready. Just squeeze it slowly. Hold your breath." Which is what I did, because a single heartbeat might disrupt its flight, describing the contours of a lethal trajectory, arc of my own deadly and determined will. This last poem that's in vain is in college. and it's called White Collar Crime. There was a guy I knew in college, not a close friend, an acquaintance, really. Someone I didn't particularly like, though he impressed me with his arrogance, his self-assurance at a time when none of us felt sure of anything, even if we acted like we did. He epitomized this feeling, a smarmy egotism that sullied our recent innocence, our ingenuous boyhood days before we blossomed into culpable adults, complete with all our lusts and imperfections. One night in a bar, the local VFW hangout, patronized by gaunt, graying men with dry faces, cheeks ruddy with frustration and suppressed rage. This friend of mine leaned over and said, "Look at that guy shooting pool. He's got a wad of cash, and he's really drunk. Let's rob him when he leaves." Which thrilled me, just the thought of it, of stepping across some boundary, some ironclad taboo, more than breaking a rule, an outright sin, a transgression. We were drunk too, of course, stinking drunk, if you want to know, the way young men get drunk on Friday night with a kind of willful, almost hysterical devotion. A spillage of sheer libido and high spirits that leads by the hour to a dangerous excess, to the feeling that others are beneath you, that their lives don't matter much. And this feeling, this hubris, levels itself now at a man laying his pool cue down in the smoking light of a bar. Outside on a back street, the night reeking with crickets and close air, a street swathed in shadows and open lots between rows of dilapidated houses, we followed him stumbling up the pavement towards Main Street, an elderly man unsteady on his feet who stopped now and then to sway, then regain his balance before staggering on, errant as a cue ball dumbly shot that skitters across dusty felt to die along a far rail. "Do it now," my friend hissed, and we found ourselves running a few yards to close the gap, propelled by something, excitement, fear, that surged through our bodies like desire. Then a sharper impulse echoed now, up through my chest into my arm, a fierce imperative of which I felt myself a part and thoroughly detached at once, as if my arm were acting on its own to seize his collar and drag his chicken body to the street. I fumbled in a mass of tangled limbs and clothes, searching for his wallet, half furious, half in awe that such a man could fight back instead of lying down and taking it. Though I can't recall him making a sound, not a cry, just the stifled groans of effort as we grappled in the dark, a hiss of air between clenched teeth, until I found his pocket, which I ripped entirely off in my indignation, my haste to be away and safe. I don't know what else to say, so shameful, so reprehensible, it makes me sick to think of it, something I'd just as soon forget, an episode from the time in my life I behaved like I was invincible, or at the very least, superior. Though forgetting it, it's about as possible as forgetting a wound, a broken bone. Yet neither of those things make me cringe with remorse, because eventually they heal. While this is something that galls me, springs upon me whenever I least expect it. So let's change the mood a little bit after that. This is a poem, like all of you, I'm constantly thinking about language. And one of the things I think about is what happens to those wonderful, fabulous words from past centuries or even earlier in our own century that we don't use anymore because each generation comes up and has neologisms, new words, coins words of their own. So when I thought about it, I thought, well, of course, they go to a retirement home. So this is called At the Retirement Home for Slang. At the retirement home for slang, they wander around in pajamas and robes, unkempt, malodorous, muttering to themselves, name tags askew on soiled flannel. Zounds, egads, and shucks, hardly revealing the power of their former lives. And here in a corner sits Balderdash, lost in a leather chair, his walrus mustache breeding smoke and sputum and crumbs. While outside, Jiminy Crickets rests on the lawn, deciphering windrows of dead leaves. But just a few miles away, near a small lake, Camp Neologism echoes with shouts. Far out and cool pick sides, as Rad and Gnarly kick a hacky sack around, and Awesome wanders in woods discovering new fauna. Woe and Chill paddle a canoe, shunning the rest, happy with their own devices. Such gaiety is lost in summer air, never finds its way across the lake as evening falls, shrouding boats at their moorings. Now, Tush Tush whispers to himself as hogwash is wheeled in, leaving only Jeepers, singing softly in fading light. Just read a couple poems at the end here from a new manuscript. I never thought that I would write a poem about baloney. This is a poem about baloney. Baloney. So much has changed, leaving its residue behind. Did I ever really think that things would work out in the end? It isn't real meat, but a compound of meats, a number of animals pressed together like particle board. We say it when we want to debunk something, when we want to imply it's not real, but false. There is no beast walking the earth whose flesh is baloney. So, when did it all begin, this fact of the artificial? And was there a real world prior to this one in which baloney had no place and can't be said to have existed? Or have I only arrived at Plato's realm of shadows by a circuitous route that includes, this time, baloney? And is there an abstract baloney, an ideal baloney to which our compromised baloney refers? Let us agree baloney is an illusion, and yet it's real. We can't have it both ways, can we? It is our own hand in the world that confounds things, though we ourselves are not an illusion. Things do work out, though not in the way we planned. An illusion is a shore towards which we drift, abandoning the real, our little boats made of aluminum and plastic, breasting the dark, uncompromising waves. I'm going to finish reading this poem. It's a little longer than the others. It's not too long. It's my... It's a poem about New York City, and worse than that, it's set in a very cold, frigid winter, as we're down here in this beautiful landscape and climate. There's a literature of poems about New York. Of course, many people have written about it. Galway Kinnell has just a fantastic, amazing poem about it. The Avenue Bearing the Initial of Christ into the New World. I'm going to include a poem by Campbell McGrath tomorrow, Angels in the Bars of Manhattan. And, Ginsberg, Whitman, and so forth. Many, many great poems written about New York. And this, I didn't intend to write about New York when I moved there. It was just not something I thought about. But That city is so powerful, it has somehow has a way of just infiltrating your imagination and your mind. So this is my contribution, for what it's worth, to that genre of literature, poems about New York. It's called From Here. It's written in stanzas, so I will pause briefly between. It's kind of an episodic poem, so I'll pause briefly between stanzas. And this is a world premiere, so I don't know how this is going to go. I never did this before. From Here. No dawn, then banks of cloud shot with light, highway salted to a dry crust, the sun a white flame, but no ice. The river a broad rippling scintillance, the skyline's jagged prophet chart. We wake to our own reality, purely imagined. The ghost life of money, war, history's fractured narrative. We had a paradise. It was around here, somewhere, near blighted derricks, tankers bloated with oil on the far bank, more of the same. And where bridges stride listlessly above the waist, raw sky, empty of wings. It is difficult to start anywhere, because anywhere is a start. Let's start again. There is no beginning, only a moving orbicular memory, an old viewfinder spinning images with each clip, with each click, clap-trap trolleys shunting streets where women stroll, scarves flaring, steeples in lost granular air. Then suddenly a rhinoceros is one tusk menacing, big as an ocean liner just now and always again, departing from a pier where crowds assemble, waving at the painted desert, the Taj Mahal. Though none of these is ours, memories of memories, head battering the birth canal, eyes pulsing cold light. We depart our parents like ships in which we carry our parents or parts of them until our children abandon us in turn mid-voyage in tiny boats, angry cast-offs, or advanced pilots on a sea round as an image wheel, which the moon lifts and releases while the drowned sink and say nothing, and survivors devour each other to stay alive. Passing through flesh to become flesh, the moon cycles serenely through its phases to become always again the moon. Standing here in this city, this gray, sprawling, dismasted island made of baby carriages and sunken rails, stink of scorched rubber, howl of metal, lucite, mortar, polymer, glass, horizon of stainless steel, chromium nickel towers so high they lean in, grid on grid, finials and brick cladding, the vanished hulls, asphalt slips once porcupined with spars, and under pavements scooped blasted interior of spongiform rock, city of tin cans, conurbation of exposed beams, men with lunchboxes dining nonchalantly in air, lives teetering on pylons and the sea's indulgence. Slurry on the river, a liquid gel, and in the park, pigeons huddled by a wall, heads stuffed back into shoulders like rolled socks. Wind veers down alleys and mews, hurdles buildings, spills into the city's mold, then hardens into towers, catwalks, parapets, buffeting the few who scramble home or off to work. Is it that difficult to get from one place to the next? Tall gusts, bludgeoning cornices, cabs, the decrepit facade of Deutsche Evangelische Lutherische, established 1859. Meanwhile, Miss Donna, mystical astrologist, deprived of customers, falls asleep over her cards. Snow circles the pediments, handprint of a child on 4th Street, filled with rain, sign on a cellar door, jazz until down. But dig in one corner and turn up houses, old pastures, parading troops, riots, slums no longer crowded. To know is to guess. Age on age, everything streams past this palimpsest, this eviction of ghosts. And by the frigid beltways, prow nudges prow. Avenues come apart. The past is spliced onto the present. The future snaps like a cable. Nidus of incalculable ambitions, necropolis of dreams. Now sunlight breaks fully on these stone embrasures. No silence but steady tumult, night or day, skirl of iron, blast of brakes, wrecking ball and dredger. Listen, someone's key rattles in a box. We were born here in the white rush of acetylene, the boom of freight, arriving in a bright arpeggio of taxis, departing in the echo of announcements. I didn't do anything, he says. I was half asleep. Then a gust of air before the train arrives, bristling sound along the tracks, like hundreds of tiny wires shaken together, a secret scuttering. The bastard slipped out on me. Doors close everywhere, and in the freezing air, all that was never said glitters louder than jackhammers probing the street. There's always somewhere else to be but where we are, hurrying uptown, hurtling down. Highways stream like gunnels, leaving our old address, while buses slick as carp nose down avenues, helicopters hop from stalks of concrete. Even the earth trembles underfoot, shuddering with departure. Sky-hung scaffolding sways, settles under booms and steel nets. Coming and going, there are clocks everywhere, circling the day, whistles, bells, schedules printed with the details of ephemera. A nickel glints on the sidewalk, pressed into stone. Pipes froze, windows cracked, it was that cold. Laundry hung like sheets of metal on the line. Later, soot, rain, the bald, sun-scorched arcades, blood stopped in the arteries, the intricate veins of the face, squalls, blizzards, 100 winters buried in the mind. This isn't a city, it's the world, built up and demolished, icicled and white. Someone skis down blanketed ravines, the abandoned offices, exposed manholes breathing steam. And later, gelid bodies, brittle as petrified wood, appear like pharaohs under elegant pyramids, makeshift ziggurats. A mummified doorman stamps his feet and takes a long-drawn, glittering breath. Praise the filth, the narrowing sexual nights, history's pages thumbed over and over in the street. Young girls trudge past, gloved hands locked, laughter spangling the air. Then a child dragging a sled. Such storms rise out of the sea to reclaim the town, dragging it under a powdery, white, iridescent foam. Praise the cinder, the compact, scalloped slush, the incalculable waste, box and melon rind, greasy axle and lug nut, the fly-blown, busted armchair in which no one sits but the bleak, fugitive sun. Praise ash can and coal chute, brackish gutter and cracked pane. How the brand new passes through the present to the harrowing, unspeakable dump. Don't let go, they giggle, turning the corner with linked arms. If you lose someone here, you may never see them again. Angle of earth and our distance from the sun. All these lives pitched outward. Man in a penthouse, woman in 14C. It was around here somewhere. Higher and higher. Time leans in, brimming the dank projects, the rich basilicas. Someone's hat blows off and rolls down the street. Who isn't a city, a generation? Who isn't a graveyard? The flaking, broken stones. Moskowitz, O'Malley, Budel, Vandersluis, Vashka, Shabagiani, Sudholm, Njoku Obi, Zenk, passing through flesh to become flesh, mothers strolling under bare trees, fathers turning in the long fall. One shop trembles like a wick, windows spewing flame, houses in surrounding streets shudder together like dry leaves, sirens and alarms, walls reflecting strobe light. Smoke billows out and pours into the sky, smell of the eternal. Scrapbooks, photos, letters, files crammed with documents, words beginning to erase themselves, the past lifting up and thinning out, the future vast and blue swallowing it whole, then nothing but the pungent odor of burnt wood, water sealing us back in. Miss Donna wakes in snowlight, no one there, only her cat chary and alert, as though something might happen, some restless apparition or voice. Listen. Across the water, cannons rumble as a ship arrives, ensigns aloft, and near the slips, drunken song, anarchy of gulls, fish market, pig stall, the butcher's litter. This island itself a ship, breasting time. She hears it in the silent rocking of the shop. And now as the wind luffs, rattle of cartwheel, bottle chink, blade drawn slowly over stone, sound of a dog from a different century. Shadows of flakes drifting down the wall, the insubstantial dead, the multitude. If it's all glass, why can't we see through it river to river, its febrile life exposed, tier on tier into endless air? And when we come down, a little drink steadies us, anchors us again to the ground. Whenever one of my friends succeeds, he says, a little something in me dies. Ghost life of numbers, all that abstraction trapped in concrete, all that sweat, that heartbreak, just as the hairs on the head are numbered, the breaths we take, going up, we say, to spend our day suspended between heaven and earth. How the invisible, the bodiless can crush us, story by story, floor by floor. 4 a.m., the savage markets, aproned men in boots haul fresh meat, hooked aloft, packed, plucked bodies, skinned sinew and scraped bone, a carcass swings hacked open to a lattice of ribs. Across town, catfish lie composed in steel bins near moist hake, plush with oil, and knots of octopus glisten in aluminum tubs. Nothing can appease the city's appetites. Its cold lockers swung wide, mounds of bread like fresh graves, stacks of lettuce, squash, potatoes, leeks, trucks arriving in the first antiseptic light, the haulers' hands bloody with the work, the very stones stained with it until their hoses wash them clean. And the river, profaned with garbage, drags its filthy body towards the sea. Praise the sewers, the black, scabrous buildings. Praise billboards, their ripped, illuminated smiles. Light erupts, spills from the center like fire, a spectral phosphorescence, leaching the ravenous dark. Windows appear, statues in the park grow pensive, trees nudge each other. The moon swings on its black cord. And on avenues thick with lights, chic salons ignite cheap heraldic logos. The city flings its halo into space, a bright, tentative exhalation above the roofs, the shivering, muffled night scarred with stars. A hesitation, a hush, the rush of traffic slows. Miss Donna lights a candle and stares into her own palm. On the next block, St. Bosco's Elementary spills children into the street. Their voices punctuate the dusk. Mothers stroll under bare trees, and fathers turn as though they could hear something, a bell ringing in the next century, the ghost life of war. If you lose someone now, you may never find them again. For a moment, walls tremble, leaning into each other as what has been leaches into what will come. And in a mailbox somewhere there's a letter written in a firm hand bearing news that will destroy a life. Meanwhile, wrapped in blankets, a bum stops at the corner and squints at a billboard for Clancy's whiskey, a little taste of heaven, to calculate the angle of Earth, his exact distance from the sun. In the morning, he'll emerge from his ziggurat of boxes, bored, stiff, and chastened, ready to assume the blessings of his new life. O fish-flanked city, crux of origins, locus of souls, we wake to our own reality just now and always again, train wreck, widow's cry, the murderous indictment, banks of light-shot, ineffable turrets rise, the tide whelms and pivots, praise the hustle, the shuck and jive, praise the boulevard's riot of light. Who knows his homeland from these littered streets? Hold on to your wallet and don't look no one in the eye. Now night lowers its thickening grit, and incoming flights beacon the sky. Who can tell his life from this rabble of announcements? From Sin City, open for lunch, Kotz Brothers Welding, Raju and Sons 24-hour tow, Hair Health Inc., Nick's Locks, and Hindelman's Smoke Shop. From no other paradise but here. Thanks for listening.